I made a diorama. So we have spent the last few weeks working on this diorama. Everything from 3D printed explosions and little bones, painting the miniatures, building the terrain, lights, and then video editing.
So much editing.
So much editing. We had well over 100 hours worth of video footage to go through. I say we, I mean my husband had well over 100 hours of footage to edit. So now, without further ado, why don't I take you through the entire process of how I built this diorama. Come on. And here we go. Foam, knife, wash, stuff, more stuff. Here we go. We're going to start with our XPS foam. I'm drawing a general outline of some of the shapes that I want for my rocks and my ledges to be, just using a pen and then cutting it out with my hobby knife. I'm doing multiple layers just so I have a little bit of variation in the rock shapes and elevations. I'm going to use my hot wire cutter to mar up the edges and start making this look more like rock faces and less like foam. Then I'll take acetone to melt the foam and add variation to the flat pieces of terrain. I'm using air-dried clay, Mod Podge, and gravel to try and fill in some of these gaps and start bringing this whole piece together so that it looks a little bit more cohesive and like one piece instead of like I glued a bunch of pieces together. Ah yes, the Sacred Orb of Texture, the tinfoil edition. I smushed this bad boy into the foam to give it that rough, rocky vibe because flat terrain is boring and I refuse to be boring. Then I slathered on some Mod Podge and dropped sand in the cracks like seasoning because terrain needs flavor. To finish, I used AK Interactive's foam texturizer to soften all the harsh edges left by the acetone, like a tiny spa day from my battlefield. A full coat of black primer, more Mod Podge, more gravel, and finally blasted it with skeleton bone from the army painter. It's lumpy, crunchy, grimdark, and officially no longer just foam. It's time to paint the Nerds of Magnus. I hit them with Thousand Suns blue because duh, and for the gold I laid down a brown base coat because gold is a diva and needs a good foundation or she gets streaky. The silver trim already has a gray base. Easy, no drama, unlike Tzaangor. So for the legs, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to get a really good smooth transition between this purple and blue color. So we're going to do some wet blending. That's just where I'm going to take the blue and the purple and make sure that they're still wet when I'm mixing them so that they just gradient really well. I started on the Tzaangor banner with a dramatic combo of grays and whites because even Chaos bird goats deserve good lighting and a strong sense of shadow. Then I slapped some purple contrast paint over the silver armor to give it a little extra flair. Gotta keep it fabulous, even while screaming warp curse nonsense. I added some transfer sheets to the banner, which was a huge bitch, and then it was on to the horns. Base coated, highlighted, and looking extra pointy. Next, I wet blended the blue and purple on the head tails for that flawless gradient that Tzaangor would approve, and gave him some nice glowy warp eyes. And finally, I freehanded the heraldry, since apparently the transfer gods abandoned me. How rude. Alright, so the Thousand Suns are finished, and I decided that I wasn't going to record painting every single miniature because we already had a ton of footage and it was just going to make this video way too long. So we only recorded a couple of each side. Now, I painted the Infernal Master and Typhus in a different video, so the links to those will be wherever they pop up on here. But if you want to see those, just click on those links. But make sure you watch those videos after you finish this one.
As always, I want to remind you guys to please like and subscribe if you like this channel, if you want to support us. I can see that a lot of you aren't, and that's just not cool, man.
That's not cool, man.
So like it, subscribe, hit those buttons. Moving on. So for the Death Guard, I decided to use Army Painter speed paints because we love Army Painter on this channel, and their speed paints are just freaking awesome. So I did a double slap chop, but I added my own kind of twist to it. We used the airbrush for our zenithal highlighting, and then we came back in with the airbrush again for our second layer of highlights because it just gives this really, really smooth, easy, beautiful transition between the colors, and I just love it. So that's my new way to double slap chop. You should try it. But without further ado, let's get started on the Death Guard.
Alright, now it's time to bring in the Rotting Boys. We're speed painting our Death Guard because I freaking love the Army Painter speed paints line. It's fast, it's fun, and it makes gross look gorgeous. Now this may sound like a sponsored ad for the Army Painter, but it's not. Not yet anyway. Lots of greens, lots of browns, some broadsword silver for all of our chains and chainmail bits, and of course, a vile rainbow cacophony of blight grenades, because even diseased demons deserve a pop of color. I painted all the bits and bobs separately because trying to paint these guys fully assembled would be a total nightmare. I like detail, but not suffer in silence levels of detail. After getting them fully assembled, I'm going to add some piercing red eyes, some bronze armor bits, and a glowing plasma gun, and a little bit more assembly. Next up, explosions, blood squibs, and weapons effects. I went full chaos and scoured MyMiniFactory for all the gory goodies. Every file I used is linked below. I printed them all in transparent resin to get that juicy, realistic glow and hollowed them out so I could fit in little LED lights later, because explosions that don't light up, just lame. Then I started placing blood squibs, starting with the poor blighted soul who got absolutely wrecked by a Thousand Suns Terminator. Sorry buddy, but your suffering looks amazing. I used blood red speed paint on the squibs to get that perfect transparent spatter look, wet, rich, and just a little unsettling. I mapped out where I wanted the explosions to go, trying to keep it realistic, cinematic, and just a bit dramatic. It's not just terrain, it's a war movie now. Time to give the terrain some depth. I went in with layers of browns, ochres, greens, yellows, and tans to give it that lived-in battlefield vibe, allowing these washes to do a sort of wet blending on their own so the terrain blended together nicely. Then I dry brushed everything with vampiric flesh for some subtle highlights. You know, the this place has seen some things kind of vibe. I painted the muzzle flashes with AK's Inferno Red Creatures box set. I painted the explosions with the same paints and in a similar way, only with the airbrush so that I could maintain the translucency for the lights and get really smooth blends for the color. Then I drilled holes through the terrain for all of the wiring and placed everyone in their final spots like little actors in a very angry play. I'm gonna test the lights and then cut a space to hide the battery pack, tuck in the wires, tape down the lights, and boom, lights done. Then I really went off the rails and exploded a poor Tzaangor. I used fishing line and UV resin to make a flying blood trail, just dripped resin down the line until it looked like he was mid-detonation. I painted it with the same blood red speed paint and boom, exploded Goatman. Nailed it. After that, I used foam coat to blend all the individual bases into the terrain, because nobody likes a floating mini. Now I'm adding dirty down gore to the Tzaangor remains for that extra nasty fleshy look. It's gross and it's perfect. And finally, I'm going to use various washes to tie the whole base together. Colors, tones, dirt, blood, it all has to blend. Then I sprinkled in my 3D printed skeletons and bones because it's not a good battlefield without some spare parts. And just like that, it's done.
Well, we are finally done with the... Shit. I forgot.
Shit. Shit hard.
I just shit hard. Well, we are finally done with the diorama, and it has been a blast to make this thing. Let me tell you, I have had so much fun. It has been so incredible to just build this little tiny world. I appreciate you guys sticking with me this far, and you know, if you really want to help the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. We also have a Patreon if you're feeling extra generous. We'll link that down below. But without further ado, let's take a look at how this whole thing turned out.